Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I'm going to show you this amazing combination of products that really made this painting so fun and so quick to paint. Now actually this took me about an hour and 20 minutes, but it's colored pencil and colored pencil is notoriously slow. We're going to start off by sketching here on this Canson XL sand grain dry mixed media paper. That is a mouthful. I'm starting off by drawing that kind of heart shape part of the owl's face. I looked to see what the most kind of broad shapes are. So I looked at that heart shape, and then I'm looking at the space between the wing and the face. It's kind of a rectangle. And then I'm getting that line in on the right side, the contour of the chest. And then I'm kind of lining up. I'm seeing where the tip of the wing or the shoulder area is lined up to the beak, and I'm getting that lined up that way and sketched in, and then I'm kind of evening that out and making sure the other wing's about the same height. And I'm basically just using all these other, lining up each shape and each part of the owl that I'm drawing with another part of the owl. This technique is called gesture drawing, and it helps you keep everything in relation to other parts of the body, so everything kind of works out, and then you get that gesture of the person or the animal. I kind of drew a map on the face, just a line straight down the middle, and then a line the other way in the middle to line up the eyes, because if you look at the face, the eyes are about halfway down. And then you've got that really strong center line where the feathers are kind of meeting up in the middle, so I wanted to get that. And then once I feel a little more confident about where my lines are, I will go and darken them up a little bit. Now, I wish I didn't have such a heavy line at the top, because it's better to kind of pull those little feathers up later after as you're getting towards the end. But I knew I was going to put background over it, so I didn't worry about it too much. And now I want to put a background in, and I'm going to use some watercolor for that. And I've just got the set of My Merry Blue watercolors, and I'll post a review on these at some point. But my friend Ophelia had given me an extra set that she had, and I also had some tubes from back in the day of My Merry Blue watercolors. So I just put everything together in this one palette that the set of 12 came in. The thing about this palette was there was a lot of really cool earth tones, and I thought it would be excellent for doing the background here. Fun fact, this is not a paper that's meant for wet media, but I was too curious not to try it. I was wondering how the surface of this paper was sized, and it does appear to have a good amount of coating or sizing to it, so using the watercolors on it actually worked pretty well. I did not wet the paper first because I knew that it's on the thin side. It's about 98 pounds, 96 pounds, somewhere around there, and I knew it was going to buckle. And it did buckle, but it dried pretty well. I reckon if you stretched it, you actually could probably, do quite a bit with watercolor on it if you wanted to, but just tape down, it warped a bit. But it does seem to be a fairly strong paper, and that gave me a lot of hope that this painting would come out pretty well. I basically just played around until I had the background finished, and then I decided I would experiment with some salt. And you do need to have a sized paper for salt to work, and the paper needs to be pretty wet. So I was very pleased to see how well the salt looked after it was dried, and how I had that really nice subtle texture, kind of blurry texture in the background, which was what I was going for. This is an owl in the woods, and I just wanted to get that kind of soft and blurry look to it. I decided while I was at it that I would tone the owl as well. I don't like to have harsh edges in my watercolors or in my colored pencil pieces, so I knew if I just put some toning on the owl, I could blur the edges where the owl and the background met, because I would be able to get plenty of contrast later on when I went in with my pencils and my crayons. Again, I'm not worried because I have no expectations that this is going to turn out well. I just wanted to play with this new paper and a bunch of different materials. I think when I look at materials like crayons and pastels, it brings a kid out in me again, and it just is very freeing and very fun. And then I get lost in the process and less concerned in how the finished product is going to come out. I'm mixing some indigo and some of this, it's like a red oxide color, and getting a nice dark grayish tone. And this is kind of a strange little palette actually, and I haven't posted the review yet. It'll come up fairly soon, I think. It was a really weird combination. If you look at the top and bottom row of my swatch there, it's got very strange colors. It's got a black, and then it's got like a an umber, and it's got an ultramarine violet, and it has like a cerulean blue and a cobalt green and this terra vert color that's very, very weak. And then it's got like the rest is like orangey, earthy oranges and yellows, and it's just a really strange palette. I was glad I had other My Merry Blue colors to integrate in there to make it a little more versatile, but generally when you see a 12 color set of watercolors, they'll be your split primary or your basic colors, and this had really strange, interesting picks. So, but it was perfect for this, and I'm like, I'm definitely going to use that watercolor palette. Now, this is pretty much where I'm going to leave it because you can see, ooh, look at how much it is wrinkling there. I didn't want to put too much time into it at this point because I'm like, this might not come out. This may be so warped that I can't even draw on it. So I decided that I would just kind of go around the edges, soak up any puddles, and set it next to my heater to dry. This paper actually dried really quickly, and you can see how much drying shift there is from wet to dry. Now, this is a natural paper. It's not bright white. It's got almost like an ivory tone to it, and it dried really quickly, and I think that's probably due to whatever coating is on the paper, and also the fact that it's so thin. It didn't really absorb much, and it dried really quickly. And it did flatten out, which I was really glad about because I was concerned that the background might just have to be scrapped, but luckily not. Now, here I'm using, I think it's like a burnt sienna or an English red. It's just kind of like a reddish orangey brown. And I'm putting in some of those patches of color that I saw on my reference photo. And I'm just kind of going around and adding that where I see it. I want to lay down a base coat. So this layer that I'm putting in here with the Neocolor 1 crayons is going to almost lubricate the area I'm going to be drawing and coloring on and give me this nice, what do I want? It's almost like it's giving me a nice base that I can work into. It's taking away a lot of the work that I'd have to do if I was doing this with straight crayons, and it's just basically making my artsy life easier and giving me the instant gratification of being able to put a lot of color down at once. I find the material that the Neocolor 1 crayons are made of is like the softest lead of the softest colored pencil. It kind of is what I wish the old Prismacolor art sticks were. The art sticks were pretty hard. I think the art sticks were harder than the Prismacolor leads that were in their pencils. Now, I can't prove that, but that's just how they feel in my hand. These crayons feel like how Prismacolor leads are. And they just lay down so nicely. And if you've mourned the fact that the art sticks were discontinued, fret no more. Go get yourself some Neocolor 1 crayons from Caran d'Ache, and I think you will be very happy and you will not miss them any longer. The largest set that they have currently is 40. I'm thinking that they may have had a larger palette of colors in the past and maybe reduced it to 40, but nevertheless, that's a really comprehensive range of colors, I think. I didn't feel like I wanted for any color because I have all sorts of colored pencils I could augment it with. The colored pencils I'll be using today are the Derwent Drawing Range, which is a beautiful earth tone palette. So if you've never tried those before, I highly recommend you have a look at them because they are just lovely. This is kind of like a steely dark gray color, almost like a Payne's gray. I'm sorry, I don't know the names by heart of the Caran d'Ache crayons, so I'll just be calling them whatever is kind of the most common name for the hues. But I'm going through defining areas. I'm putting in shadows. This Payne's gray color is wonderful for adding in my shadows. And my goal here is to get kind of a light coating on most everything here so that when I go in with the pencils, I've got a lot of my work done for me. You may be wondering what other products you can use instead of these Neocolor 1 pastels. Now, these are basically an artist's crayon. They're just a super pigmented crayon, basically. They're harder than an oil pastel. They're more waxy, and they are similar to, say, the art sticks that are discontinued, or even Crayola used to have I think they still do, it's like a set of colored pencil sticks. And Royal and Langnickel did as well. So if you have one of those and you want to give that a try, absolutely try that before you go and buy something new. Now, you may have recently picked up the Neocolor 2 water-soluble pastels, or watercolor crayons, as I like to call them, because maybe you're following some of my tutorials, or maybe you enrolled in my brand new watercolor crayon workshop. That's still on launch special for the rest of the month, so I will put a link and a coupon code in the video description if you want to check that out. If you're using the Neocolor 2 water-soluble pastels from Caran d'Ache, you can use them in this fashion. I will say with the Neocolor 2s, I personally prefer just to do the entire thing in the Neocolor 2s. I think it's quicker and easier than adding the color pencils. But just because I knew somebody would ask, I actually did a little sample just today downstairs in my craft room. I just did a quick little flower, and yes, you can use them in the same fashion. The pencil does not stick as well on top of the Neocolor 2 unless you like liquefy it a little bit with some water, but you definitely can try it both ways and see what you like best if that's what you already have, because the best supplies you can use are the ones you already have. But I just wanted to use my Neocolor ones today, and I just wanted to play and see how they stacked up and how they worked with these other mediums, and how they worked on this paper. So that's why I'm using these. But as always, use what you have. I did see that the Neocolor 1 pastels that I'm using today were like 50% off the regular price on Blick and on Amazon. Amazon was a couple bucks cheaper, but they were both like 50% off or more, which was kind of exciting. So if you were curious about these, then, you know, you might want to have a look at both places and see if you can land yourself a deal. And you can see how quickly I haven't taken out any of the coloring portion here. I've left it all in. So we are literally 11 minutes in and we're already this far. Now, if we were doing that with your standard colored pencil, it would take us a lot longer to get to this phase, and we would have to color a lot more meticulously. We'd want to do our small overlapping ovals because you wouldn't want to be this sloppy with your colored pencils. Here, you can put this primer layer down and then you can work over top with your colored pencils. Just like the Neocolor 2s, these have a little tab on the side that makes it easy to peel back the paper as you start to wear down your crayons. And just like with the Neocolor 2s, I find that I use the white more than anything. Now, I don't sharpen my Neocolor 1s because they're not water soluble. With my Neocolor 2 water soluble pastels, I will sharpen them into a palette and just add water to them. So I have basically a gouache palette that I can use as needed. Since I really don't know how I would contain the shavings to maybe add mineral spirits to and reactivate, I just don't sharpen them. And so can you see how I'm holding that crayon there? I am holding it so that I am working on the kind of diagonal on the edge of the point so that I can kind of sharpen it as I color. So I'm basically just trying to keep a fairly decent point on it as I go. Kind of like, I don't know how you might apply lipstick so that you keep a point on your lipstick instead of getting it all blunted out. That's basically what I'm doing with my crayons here because I don't want to sharpen it and waste it. Now they're very slow wearing, so if you absolutely want to have a fine line to draw with, I wouldn't sharpen it to a needle point because I think it would snap, but you know, you could sharpen it. They're going to last a long time, but I still am kind of stingy. I don't like to waste. And especially since I'm going to use colored pencil and I'll have plenty of detail there, I don't feel like I need to. I'd rather just kind of work on the edges and try to keep my points that way and use it for the bulky coloring. If you didn't have colored pencils and you just are using the wax pastels here, well, yeah, I could see sharpening it there because you would need something to give you some detail. But for me, I'd rather just grab my colored pencils and use those for my details. Now look at how opaque things are looking now. Look at how much body we have built just in the last 2 minutes. I thought about chopping some of this out, but then I'm like, well, it looked really sudden when I just took like 2 minutes out just to see, and it looked really sudden. So I'm like, well, I'm going to leave it in, and you guys can either speed me up. There's a little gear. If you're on YouTube, and well, obviously you're on YouTube, you're watching this video, in the corner of the screen, there's a little gear, and if you click on that, you can speed me up like twice as fast if you want to, if this is tedious and boring. But I thought it was kind of fun to see how it went together in real time, and that way if you're like coloring along with me, then you'll have a good idea of how it goes. Now you could use your coloring crayons. If you had like a box of Crayola crayons or whatever you have, you could definitely color along with those. Now some of the issues you may run into by using a crayon is that it's very waxy and the crayon might kind of ball up on you. I actually experimented with a bunch of kids' crayons before I received these to see if I could find a cheaper alternative. And I tried the Crayola standard kids' crayons, and I also tried the twistable crayons by Crayola. And I found the twistables to be probably the most similar. So if you are on a budget and you want to try this out, but you're not ready to invest in the Neocolor ones, I would try to scrounge up some of the twistable ones and see how they work. Now, honestly, I think because you're getting a really high pigment load and these are so slow wearing that I honestly think that the Caran d'Ache crayons are probably a better deal because they're going to last you so much longer and they're going to give you the results you want. But if you're just seeing if you're even going to like it before you get too carried away, you could definitely give the Twistables a try or one of the woodless colored pencil options that I mentioned earlier. I love this Mars Violet color in the Derwent drawing pencil range. The Derwent drawing pencils are very soft, very thick lead. They lay down on the Neocolor One crayons really well. So I'm really impressed with that. I do have to apologize. There are some times where my camera is going to go in and out of focus, and I'm going to try to cut most of that out. But if I miss some, please go easy on me. I had time-lapsed the whole thing and recorded that, but I was like, geez, I wonder if I could go in and just edit out the blurry parts and still get enough to show you because, man, this was such a fun process that I don't want you to miss out. I want you to try it and see how it goes and hopefully are inspired to, pull out your supplies and make some art happen. I think I shouldn't have zoomed in my camera and I should have just zoomed in my editing software because I think I would have gotten a better, crisper image that way. Now you can see where I have a lot of crayon though, the white is having a hard time to stick, but it's still allowing me to blend out my strokes and give me those kind of fur-like feathers that are on the face. And that's what I mean about having that kind of like priming layer or that blocked in layer. It helps you build the texture that you need and that fullness and the volume that you're going to want for this, this bird. These birds are large and we've had a bunch of barred owls hanging around our house over the past year and a half or so. And I mean, they're big. Owls are big. When they fly in front of you, if you're out walking, they'll kind of scare you a bit. They are really large. And, I want to capture that volume in the artwork here. So getting that base layer of the crayons under the pencils really helps achieve that. I did the other eye the same as the first. I flipped it upside down though to make sure that I got things symmetrical, and that's a little tip whenever I am working on eyes on a portrait. I flip my painting upside down and I will make sure both eyes match. It'll just stand out to you if you have one eye higher than the other or whatnot, or give it a day, like put your work away and then come back a day later and look at it, and you'll be able to see if you've got something that's off, whether it's in a face or a vase or anything else. It should be symmetrical. I know he's got a little crazy eye look to his face right now. That's just because my highlights aren't quite there, and I think I need to add a little bit more black to the top of the left side. But if I'm getting to a point where I feel like I'm not sure if I've got something just right, rather than force myself to work on that area, I'll skip to some other parts. So I'm skipping to the heart feather area. I don't know what that's called, but it's where the face, I don't know, I know there's a name for it, but it's like where the face cone feathers, where the parts meet, where the cowlick meets, I don't know. It's the heart shape. I'm basically working in there and just making little scribbly marks that will give me the impression of the two directions of the feather pattern kind of meeting up. So you've got some feathers that are going out in all directions from the eyeballs, right? And so it almost makes two saucers, and then the feathers meet up over the nose and they meet at the edge of the head. And so I'm just getting that in. A time-saving tip is to kind of cross-pollinate your colors as you go. So I needed that kind of, I think this might be Ruby Earth. It's kind of like a earthy red. Since I was using that around the face, around the eyes, I'm going to look and see where else I can put that in the body, and I'm going to go ahead and lay that color down now. I like to work the entire painting at once. I know many colored pencil artists prefer to start on one side of their work and work, like if they're right-handed, they might start on the left side and work from left to right and have everything detailed as they go. I don't like to work that way, and the reason I don't is because I might decide that I hit a certain point and I'm like, oh, it's done, I like it at this level. But if you start from one side to the other, then you've got to keep up that level of detail. You've got to keep up that style the entire way, rather than treating the painting as like a holistic, organic object that you kind of grow. And you can stop at any point and decide that it's done. But if you've got one part super detailed, on the edge, well, you got to kind of carry that all the way through. So that's why I choose to do it this way. Also, I don't like to start with a super detailed drawing. I like to let the painting evolve as I go. So, I mean, I feel like my drawing is accurate when I start off. I start off with an accurate but sloppy drawing, and then I refine it as I go. And that's how I prefer to work, because it's kind of like, I don't know, it just gives me kind of surprises along the way and keeps me engaged and interested. I don't like to take something that's, I mean, unless I have like a really expensive piece of paper or I'm doing work for a client, I would rather just kind of jump in and let it evolve. If you do want to start like on one side of the paper and work your way over and keep everything really, really detailed, you got to start with a really good drawing. And I would recommend drawing it on a scrap piece of paper where you can erase to your heart's content and then transfer it onto your good paper. Or even trace the image if you need it to be super, super accurate. But I prefer just to kind of, you know, let the art take me, just kind of get in the zone and let the, just vibe out with my supplies. Oh, I sound like such a hippie, but that's how I like to do it. Maybe I am a hippie. My kids say I'm a hippie, so maybe I am, but that's how I like to do it anyway. Speaking of experimental techniques, which is what this video is about, we're going to actually play with a ceramic knife. Now, I had to have this like, I don't know, a year ago, and I ordered it. I saw somebody using it. I think I saw Harry from the Art Gear Guide using these ceramic knives to get detail in his artwork. And I was like, oh, well, I got to have one of those. And it sat in its package since Amazon delivered it to me roughly a week later. So I decided, yeah, today's the day. I'm getting that out. I'm going to play with it because I think this would be perfect, because I need to have some lighter little hairy feathers, and I had kind of filled the tooth in some of these areas and the white wasn't going to stick. So so I opened this up and started using it, and I think it worked pretty well, but I don't know if there's a really big advantage to using this over using an X-Acto knife, other than the ceramic is probably less likely to cut it. But I accidentally got the auto retractable one, so I have to hold the button while I scrape it. Otherwise, it slips back into the knife. So I wouldn't recommend the auto retractable blade slice knife if you're thinking about getting one. I would just get a regular one, but I didn't really, I guess, realize what I was ordering. But anyway, c'est la vie. I used it. It was fine. I don't think you need it. Use an X-Acto knife if you can be careful enough not to slice through your paper, I guess. Now I'm going in with the chocolate brown, which is a really, really rich dark brown. It's almost like a brown and black mixed together. And I'm redefining some of the areas where the feathers meet. This is actually almost like the really deep dark shadows in between the two layers of feathers that meet up kind of in this saucer area. And since I've scraped a bit with the knife, there are some more spaces where a pencil can grab purchase with the paper. So if you've had an area that's too waxy, you can actually scrape that wax off and you can go back in with pencil. So that's kind of where the knife can come in handy. Like I said, though, you know, you don't have to have a fancy ceramic knife. And if you do buy the fancy ceramic knife, don't buy the auto retractable one unless, you know, you are really bad about leaving knives open where your kids can get them. I guess that would be a reason to get the auto retractable. But for me, it was just a hindrance. And, you know, I'd almost rather just take the blade out of the knife and hold the blade by itself. But anyways, enough about the blade. I'm just going in and adding little flicks of feathers with a sharp Derwent drawing pencil. I zoomed in on my reference photo and saw that the tip of the beak was actually lighter than the black of the major part of the beak. So I went in with this wheat pencil and just tried to lighten it up. And I needed a little bit more opacity. So I'm going in now with the cream colored Neocolor 1 crayon and adding a little bit of body to that color there. And that's working pretty well. I can always go in later with a touch-up texture and titanium white for brighter highlights if I need to. So that's good enough for now, though. There's a bit of a speckled pattern on the owl's feathers, and I'm going in with a black Derwent drawing pencil here for this. And it's relatively sharp. You don't need it to be super sharp, but I'm kind of turning my pencil as I go to retain that point. And it can be a little jarring when you go to put a pattern on after you've been building up the layers and the textures so much, and it can kind of look out of place. Like it can look like the poor owl has like mites or something, but just stay the course, get that pattern in, because if it looks too bold, you can always go in with one of the crayons or a lighter colored pencil and you can blend it out. So don't worry about it being too sharp. You're better off having it sharper at this point and then blending it out later than being too wishy-washy with it and not getting enough of that pattern down. So I just went through that. You can mostly see the pattern on the wing that's closest to the viewer and also a bit on the chest and neck. And yeah, I just kind of worked through until I had that pattern filled in. At this point, I was thinking, oh, that looks a little too rough and bold. So I went in with a yellow ochre pencil and just kind of gently merged the colors together. I'm not using a lot of pressure here. In fact, I didn't use any severe pressure throughout this entire painting. So this definitely would be something you could do if you have any arthritis or strength issues. I think mixed media is really nice for that sort of thing, because if you have a product that's too hard, you can use like a softer product like a crayon or even a watercolor to get in your base tones and then go in with your pencil as you need the detail. So keep that in mind if you do suffer from arthritis or something else that makes it uncomfortable to press firmly with your hands. I'm blending here with a little bit of the white crayon because it's just packed such a punch, and I wanted to tone down that pattern a little bit. Sometimes you'll even see details in a photo that it's nice that they're there, but they don't help your painting. Like keeping the detail in the face is really nice on an animal portrait, and then letting some of the other details soften out a little bit away from the face can actually make the painting look a little bit nicer because you're able to draw the viewer in to the personality of the animal that you're drawing. Of course, you can paint however you want to paint. That's just a way that I kind of prefer to paint, but we're all different, and that's the wonderful thing about art. You can do whatever you feel like doing. Now, I did notice that my values needed to be a little bit darker here on this further away wing, and also I wanted to get rid of the grain of the paper that I could see there, so I'm just layering up some black and some chocolate and some of that kind of burnt sienna color, and I'm also adjusting my values. So when I add a dark value to one place, I generally will look and say, where's my darkest value? And the eyes, the beak, and that wing that's further away will be my darkest values. And then once I get those in, I say, okay, what's the next darkest? How do these relate to one another? Do I have them in balance? And that's another reason I like to approach working the whole painting at once, because this isn't a paint by number. I am continuously tweaking and adjusting and reassigning values until I have everything in relation to one another. And if you start at one side of your painting and you start working detail on one side and you work your way across, you may make an error in your value right off the bat, and then everything else is going to be off in relation to that. So working everything all at once, I feel, creates a more holistic approach to painting, and also helps you paint a little bit quicker, and also helps the final outcome feel a little bit more complete and more holistic, I guess is the best way to describe it. Nothing should feel disjointed or jarring when you're looking at the picture, unless that's something you're specifically trying to achieve. And that's not what I'm trying to achieve in my art. I'm generally trying to create something that is textural and that is beautiful and that is, I don't know, I like to add beauty to the world if I can, I guess. I needed some more of the black spots here, so I went ahead with the black pencil and I'm adding those in, and also any other dark shadows and values, like the deepest shadows in between where the feathers meet. You know that I've built that up quite a bit. I talked about that when we were doing it with the ruby earth and then with the chocolate brown, and it's just a series of building that depth. If I went right in with black right off the bat, I wouldn't have that nuance of the browns and the reds and the lavenders that you see in the feathers. I've gone back in with the crayon now because I wanted some chunkier, less sharp spots. And again, it's a layering process. So don't feel bad if you need to go back to the crayon layer. It's not working backwards. It's just adding what you need. When you go in with the darker crayons, you may get some of that grain back. So to get rid of that grain and to smooth it out, just go over it with another pencil. I was using some yellow ochre and also some chocolate, and I'm just kind of smearing that wax into the picture. And it's a beautiful dance of back and forth between the crayons and the pencils, and it's fun. I had so much fun working on this piece, and I hope you try something like it. I'll link the reference photo down below, and the reference photo was by Daniel Makura. I hope I'm saying that properly, but it's from Unsplash, and that way you can print it out and draw along if you want to, because this was such a fun painting to do, and hopefully you have some materials at home that you can substitute if you don't have exactly what I'm using. And of course, I will link everything in the video description in case you want to find exactly what I've been using here. Also, when you're looking at something that looks like a very simple color, like it's all earth tones, or it's all white, look for the undertones. I saw a lot of peach in this owl portrait, and you wouldn't think to use this color generally unless you were doing like a human portrait or something where you've got that really pale skin tone. But I saw that undertone, just like I would see a little bit of like a steely blue and that light violet and the yellows and the browns and the reds. And you want to look for those nuanced colors, because you can, as an artist, you can open the eyes of others and you can show the muggles how we see the world. And being able to do that is a gift. So look for those undertones, look for the things that made that reference special, that made you want to paint it, and then you can make it your own. And I think that's a really wonderful thing about being an artist. Now we get to probably my favorite part of the picture. Maybe not my favorite part, but definitely a favorite part. And this is adding the bright highlights. So I'm using that product I mentioned called Titanium White mixed with touch-up texture. This is a product from Brush and Pencil, and I will link it below. I picked this up at Blick about 3 years ago, and it is just wonderful because it's a nice bright white paint that you can use on top of colored pencil and it won't flake off. It's completely archival. So if you don't have this and you want to use a gel pen, nobody's going to stop you. It'll probably be fine. But if you want to absolutely make sure that it's not going to flake off, this is a much better idea than using acrylic paint or a white gel pen. And I've really come to appreciate this product a lot over the last couple of years, especially since I like to work in mixed media. And many times I'm starting off with a watercolor and then I'm using colored pencils on top, or I'm using markers and then I'm using colored pencils on top. Not that I'm really that worried if I was using markers, because markers are a fugitive medium anyway, but it's just nice to know that it's not going to flake off in my sketchbook or what have you. So I highly recommend this product. I apologize, my hand will be in the way for some of this, because when you're using this product, I recommend you use a little spotter brush, and a spotter is a round brush that has very short hairs, and that gives you a lot of control over where the medium goes. And also, I recommend you use your paintbrush at a 90-degree angle with your surface. And if you do that, you're going to have the best control. You're going to just be using the tip of that brush. And when you're doing these really fine highlights at the end, that's really important. That way you won't have to go back in and erase it or wipe it off or anything like that. So that's pretty much how I finished off this painting. You can add as much or as little as you want. And if you go overboard, because the Brush and Pencil product, it's a product called Touch-Up Texture, you mix with the titanium white, which is essentially ground up white colored pencil pigment. Because it has that texture to it, you can go over it with colored pencils and you don't have to worry about it flaking off. So just let it dry and then go over it with your pencils or crayons, and you shouldn't have any issues with that coming off of your painting. So that's another reason I like it. You can work over it if you need to without flaking it off. It lets you kind of have a little bit of an undo button or a little bit of like a correction fluid for your colored pencil work, and that is that's a nice option to have, because you spend a lot of time, well, I mean, we didn't spend a lot of time on this because I told you all the tricks and tips on how to cheat your way through a painting, but generally you spend a lot of time on a colored pencil work, so you want to be able to, you don't want to ruin it at the end, and this is a pretty gentle way to finish off a painting and still be able to go back in with your pencils if you want to. And here is another one of my favorite parts of every artwork. It is taking the tape off when you are done a painting. Not only does it help keep it flat and keep your painting from getting fingerprints all over it, it gives you a nice border when you're done. And I think that looks so nice. You can kind of bend it back if it did warp a little bit like I did, kind of curl it in the opposite direction to flatten it out. But I don't think it wrinkled bad at all, and it will be fine under a mat and in a frame. If you would like to see more tutorials and see my my watercolor crayon workshop class that uses the sister product of the Neocolor ones, using the water-soluble Neocolor 2 crayons, I will have that link down below along with a coupon code to save you 50% during the month of April during my launch special. If you like this, I think you're going to love that. And I want to thank you so much for watching. And till next time, happy crafting. Bye.